So let's just have a quick look on Corelli's website on the left hand side here. You can see it's got quite a lot of new optional parts on. So it's got all of the 7075 hinge pin braces. It has the upper hinge pin braces and servo plate, as well as the front chassis brace here, the shock towers, a different chassis, a rear shock tower as well, and it has this carbon fibre brace going all the way down the centre, and it also has a 3mm stiffening plate at the back as well. Now, only for the rear, only the brace which goes to the diff case is aluminium. The one that's the upright for the towers, which the body posts mount onto, is still plastic, but I think that's fine considering how much stiffer the chassis should be, with it being a harder material, having the carbon fibre stiffeners on there and the 7075 braces on. It is definitely a big improvement, and if you were to buy all of those parts and put them on a RTR Kronos, the chassis itself is like 90 quid, and I think the towers are like 30 quid each. So it's definitely cheaper to buy this roller and put your own electronics in than it is to buy a normal Kronos and upgrade it. Now, whether you think you need all of these things, I mean, that's up to you. If you only want a couple of these bits, like maybe you bend a shock tower and you just buy those, or you just get the chassis braces, maybe it's cheaper to buy the RTR. But if you're going to buy all of these pieces eventually, which if you bash really hard you probably would, I think this is quite a good option to go with. So now that we've had a look at it on the Corelli website, let's have a look at some of the parts and the spec that I'd go for. So first of all, on the right hand side here, you can see I buy the rolling chassis from Wheelspin Models here if I was in the UK, which I am. You can see they have it for 373 quid with free shipping, which is a good deal. So spec wise, if you wanted to go with a full Team Corelli setup, like what you get in the RTR car, but maybe a little bit nicer of a servo, then this is the spec I'd go for. Redline RC seem to have the best prices, although the website is pretty slow. So they've got the ESC, the Torox 185, which is basically just a Max 8. Comes with two XT90 plugs, which are good connectors. And they've got that for 90 quid, which is cheaper than it is to buy a normal Max 8, so that's a good deal. They've also got the motor for 75, and it's normally about 80 quid. So you're looking at about 160-ish for the motor and ESC combo, which isn't too bad compared to an actual Max 8 combo. And if you buy a Hobbywing Max 8 combo separately, it costs more than that. They've also got this servo, which is pretty nice servo. We'll get to the specs of that a bit later on, but it's 60 quid at Redline. Again, it's a pretty good deal. So I think if you wanted to go with a full Team Corelli setup, buy most of the parts from the UK, one place, you want them to arrive quickly, this is probably the spec I'd go for here. It's going to be perform the same as the standard truck, other than be more durable, and you can have a much nicer, faster servo. It's stronger and the speed is really good on that. Now you could go on a bit of a different route here, and on the Model Sport website I've got a couple more options. So a normal Max 8 combo with XT90s on is 152.99 to buy it as the combo, which is actually cheaper than buying the Team Corelli motor and the ESC separately. You are getting a 2200 kV motor as well, so it's going to spin a little bit faster. You might want to gear it down a little bit, I don't know. And then we also have a third option, which is what I run in my Hyper ST. If you want a bit more power, obviously you go in for an XTR, you're going to bash really hard, so you can get the Max 8 ESC. And if you're willing to wait a bit longer, I'd actually go for this 4092 1650 kV motor. And this motor and ESC combo is exactly what I run in my Hyper ST. You can see the motor is quite a bit cheaper here on AliExpress, but you might have to wait a while for that. whereas the ESC you can just order it straight from Allsport. But obviously, even though you save quite a bit on the motor, like 44 quid compared to 75, you are putting that money into the bigger ESC. Now, you can't really run AS on this motor. If you get the lower KV version, like the 1250 or the 1420, you could maybe run AS. But I'd recommend just sticking with 6. I mean, you've still got a bigger motor, so you can put a bigger pinion on, have more power, and the ESC on 6S, because it's rated for 8, is going to run nice and cool, up to 160 amps. Now, if you were going to go with the Max 8 combo and you're thinking, oh, I don't want to spend too much, you might, instead of that Corrali servo, want to go with one of these JX EcoBoost servos. I've got, I think, 2 or 3 of these, and they're actually really good specs wise. We'll go into the specs again, like I said, a bit later on, but it's 23 quid. Now, I know you can get 25 kilogram servos on Amazon for like a tenner or maybe 15 quid, but I personally find those incredibly slow. They don't work well with high voltage, and realistically, even though they say they're 20 or 25 kilograms, I've measured the torque on those and they perform like a 15 or even a 12 kilogram servo most of the time, and you've still got that slowness. Whereas the speed on this EcoBoost is decent. You can run it at 7.4 volts because it's high voltage servo, and I believe the Team Corrali ESC and both the Max 8 and the Max 6 support 7.4 volts on the BEC, so you can get that extra performance out of this servo. You do have to wait for it to come from China though, so there is that as well, but it takes about the same time as the motor does, so if you were going with that motor and ESC, you could use this servo. Finally, the other servo option, which if you were going for quite a high-end build, high power, and you want the best of the best, you'd obviously go with the Max 6, the bigger motor, bigger pinion, and if you're going to go all out on a servo, I recommend this servo. I've got the Bluebird 2905 BLS, and this is basically the same as that, but it's got a full aluminium case, and I've broken the tabs off on my 2905, but this is literally almost the same servo, but in a fully metal case. It's not red, so it doesn't really fit with the Team Corrali theme, but we're going for maximum performance here, and you can get this from RC Mart. Unfortunately, you can't get it in the UK, which is a bit of a shame, but it is $70, which is about 50 quid, I think, at the minute, maybe a bit more, 52. Yeah, all of these parts here give you some good options. You'll see here I've got the build listed out. Obviously the price of the roller remains the same. You buy it from Wheelspin, Model Sport, wherever. They're about 380 quid. This just happens to be 370, 379, which is cheapest I could find it. I've added up the price of the motor and ESC combos up there, and they're on this line here, and then the servos are on the line underneath, which we've got the Team Corrali servo from the UK, and this one from China, which is the JX EcoBoost, which is the cheapest option, and the Bluebird, which is like your super high-end option, and it is a bit cheaper, but you might have to pay import tax, and it is a bit more tricky to find. It's coming in around £550 to £600. This is obviously without a radio as well. You'd have to add your own radio. And personally, I do like the Punisher wheels, which are these here, better. So I've also included the wheels, another total with the wheels in the price. So build number 1 over here is the full Team Corrali setup, which is this for the electronics plus the wheels, and you can see that's just a tad under 600 quid, and it is the most expensive out of these builds, even though I would say it's probably the sort of mid-range performance. It's not going to perform much better than a stock one other than the steering. Then you've got the Team Corrali ESC and motor combo with the JX Servo. So if you want to keep your red theme, but you want a bit of a cheaper servo, 60 quid's a lot for a servo. And I think the JX EcoBoost will perform better than the RTR servo still. Then that is a really good option at 560 quid. Pretty good deal. Then build 3 over here, I've got the Max 8 combo, which is the one from Model Sport here, with a 2200 kV motor. You might need another pinion with that to gear it down a little bit. But with the Max 8 combo and the JX Servo, you've actually got the cheapest option. It's almost coming in at 550 quid there, which is a good £60 cheaper than some of your other options here, which makes it a really good deal. If you want to go with a budget system, I don't know why, maybe go for a bit of a lighter system instead of the Jambo or Punisher wheels. Maybe go for some backflip LPs with this kind of system and do a bit of a lighter build. And then the final build, which would be like your heavy maximum power build, you'd go with the Max 6 and rocket motor here, 4092, and that is actually 170 quid, which is only a fiver more than your Corelli combo. Really, the only downside to this is having to wait quite a while for the motor to arrive potentially. And I've put the Bluebird servo in there as well for the maximum performance, and you can see it's 50 quid, which is actually again cheaper than the Corelli servo, but again you might get import tax and all that on that, so bear that in mind. And it ends up being about the same price, and I think the Punisher wheels would really go well with that, because you've got a bigger motor to push those bigger wheels and tyres, so I think that would work out really well. You could even put a Punisher body in these as well, but then you'd be over 700 quid. So let's just compare the servos for a second. Got the JX EcoBoost here, which is 23 quid, which is a really good deal for what it is. And you can see they have got the specs down here. It's Taiwan, aluminium gears, so it is metal geared, and it is coreless. The Team Corelli servo is also coreless, I believe, but it's got the titanium gears. All of these, by the way, have got fully metal cases as well, so that's nice. But the Team Corelli one is most expensive, but it does perform really well. It's got great specs on the torque and the speed. And then finally, we've got the Bluebird, which is the only brushless servo, and it is again titanium geared, full metal case, but it is the wrong colour if you're bothered about that kind of thing. Personally, I don't care. I'd rather go for the performance. So I've got the specs of all these servos over here. For 6 volts on the time, this is to go 60 degrees. All of these servos are measured at 6, 7.4, 8 volts, 60 degrees turning. You can see the Bluebird servo is rapid, and this servo is just absolutely insane even at 6 volts. And you can see throughout the voltage range their servo is mental fast. It's probably too fast for some people. The Corelli servo again is under 0.1 of a second for 60 degrees even at 6 volts. 7.4 and 8.4, it just gets even faster. And the JX EcoBoost is just over 0.1 of a second at 6 volts, and when you put your BEC to 7.4, which you should be running on all of these ESC combos really, you can see it is 0.09, which is almost as fast as the Corelli, which costs 3 times as much, so that's great. The only downside to the JX one is it's not rated at 8.4, but for most people, unless you're running an external BEC, which I don't know why you would on a truggy, doesn't matter. Now, torque-wise, the Corelli is actually the weakest. So even though it's a bit quicker than the JX EcoBoost, it doesn't have the best spec for the torque. This could be down to how they measure it, whether they're measuring stall torque or they're letting the servo kick a bit before it pulls on something and then stalls out. You don't really know. But the Corelli has plenty of torque to turn the wheels, so it should be perfectly fine at 22 kilograms, and with the speed as well, it's gonna handle well. The JX EcoBoost, like I said, I've got like 2 or 3 of these servos in various different cars and trucks, and it performs pretty well. And 27 kilograms is Chinese, so it might be a bit overrated, but 27 kilograms is respectable, even if it's only 22, the same as the Corelli in real life at 7.4 volts. I mean, it's 3 times cheaper, so you know. And then the Bluebird, again, just a beast of a servo. At whatever voltage you put it at, it's going to be the highest and the fastest out of all of these. The Bluebird servo is absolutely mental, and if you're willing to wait for it to come, it normally comes from Taiwan. Actually, RC Mart's in Taiwan or Hong Kong, I can't remember, but it's not actually in China, but from around that area, so it might get airmailed, which will be a bit quicker. So yeah, it's definitely the best servo if you can find one, but they are quite difficult to find sometimes. So yeah, there we go. That's pretty much it for this video, I think. Personally, considering I already have the Max 6 combo, I'd probably just take it out the Hyper ST, stick an EcoBoost servo in there, because I've already got all of those parts. I would quite like to try out the Corelli motor on a motor test Tuesday, and the Corelli ESC is pretty much the same as a Max 8, so I don't think I'd bother with that. The servo is also pretty nice, but again, the price isn't really the best. Servos in the UK seem to be really expensive for some reason. I don't know why. Like Model Sport or whatever don't just import these and sell them for 30 quid. They'd still sell loads, I would have thought. But yeah, that's a few different options for you there. That's it for this one. If anyone chooses to use one of these combination of components, put it in the comments below, but I think these would be a really nice spec.